Hello you guys, Lo-Fi Art here, and today I'll be bringing you guys yet another tutorial on how to shade, and this time I'll be focusing on how to use blending stumps and tortillons to blend your graphite layers. If you guys don't know, blending stumps and tortillons are essentially pretty much compressed paper, and they're those sticks that you see around, and you use them to blend your graphite layers to really get smooth gradients. So let me show you guys how I utilize these tools for my portrait pieces. If you guys are new here, please consider liking the video, sharing it, and subscribing, as it does help me out a lot. But without further ado, let's get started. So here, I'm using the 2H pencil, and I'll be using this to lay down that first layer. If you guys recall from the layer video, we're gonna do the same thing that we did there here, but except this time, since it's the face, you know, it's a lighter area of the composition. Obviously I'm not gonna be using the 2B 6B pencils that I was using. I'll be starting out this first layer with a 2H pencil. The H values are a lot lighter. They don't get as dark. They are a little bit, I would say, more coarse. I don't know how to describe it, but the graphite isn't as compressed, so it doesn't like melt off the pencil. It just it requires a little bit more intricacy. So as you guys can see here, I'm holding it from right off the edge, you know, trying to apply as minimal pressure as possible. Like I said, this first layer is purely just a base layer so that I don't have any white spots in my composition. Obviously, if there is a white spot, if there are highlights, you don't want to shade over them, so keep that in mind. But for the most part, this first layer is going to cover the entire face, and I'll be working with it. I'll be shading the entire area, really taking my time with it, trying to not have as much like rough patches as possible. Remember guys, just because you have blending stumps and just because you have the ability to blend your graphite later on does not mean that you should just apply your first layer with a pencil as carelessly as possible. You know, like, you still want to take your time. You still want to make sure that your first layer is looking nice, even, and not too rough, because that's gonna help you down the road when you start blending. So now I take my tortillon here. Well, this is actually the blending stump, and I literally just go over that first layer of graphite that I did. I start essentially shading and blending the graphite that I just laid. That's all there is to it. Obviously, you got to make sure that you apply the right pressure. You want to make sure that you keep the blending motions consistent. So right here, as you guys can see, I'm going in circles. I'm doing it in very small very small circles to keep the graphite as tight as possible to really blend in those rough patches. And once I get up to the top, the forehead area, I could start being a little bit more deliberate. It's a bigger area, so I could afford it. But for these tighter spaces, I make sure to go in really small circles and really take my time blending the graphite. Over here, I start doing wider circles, you know, since the forehead is a little bit bigger, I could afford, you know, covering a little bit more of the area. And as I progress, you guys could see that the graphite is already looking a lot smoother. It's already looking a lot more blended than how it was looking before. And I literally just do this blending for the entire face, the entire first layer of graphite that I just did. This is gonna allow you to have a very smooth first base layer and have a really nice blended foundation to work with. Right here, once again, I'm doing it in little small circles because it allows for more control, and around the eyes also a little bit small circles for more precision. And the one thing that I want to say is, take your time with this. Blending and shading is all about patience. It's all about time. It's all about how much you could control the pencil as well, the pressure, and all that is gonna come with practice and patience. Those are the two pillars of drawing, guys: practice and patience. So make sure that when you guys are shading, you guys take your time with the first initial graphite layer with a pencil. Take your time with that. And then once you bring in the tortillon, take your time with that as well. The more time you take with it, chances are the better your composition is going to look at the end. And right here, as you guys can see in the before with the blending stump, the pencil is very rough looking. And after I blended it with the stump, it's a lot more smoother. It's a lot more cohesive. And now that I laid down the first layer, I go ahead and use the tortillon. And this tortillon in particular, I utilize to shade those really dark areas from the previous video, if you guys remember. So it already has a lot of graphite in it. Like, I don't have to go ahead and lay another pencil layer for this specific area, because the tortillon itself already has enough graphite to allow me to begin shading that portion. So what I do, instead of doing a pencil layer, I just go grab my tortillon that has graphite and I literally just start shading. So here you guys can see that I'm going in those dark areas of the eyes, the midtones, I would say, and I'm laying them down with just the tortillon. I'm not using the pencil. I am not laying down a graphite layer with a pencil. I'm just straight up using the leftover graphite that I have in my tortillons from previous shadings. And the tip I could give you guys here is that make sure you guys utilize your tortillon smartly, because once you use a tortillon to blend the really dark area of your composition, that tortillon is going to keep that graphite and it's going to keep that darkness pretty much for its lifetime, unless you start shaving it. But I don't really shave my tortillons unless they get really dull. But I find that dullness actually helps smooth out the shading as well. So it's trade-offs that you got to think about. But once you commit a tortillon or a blending stump to a really dark area, chances are it's going to stay dark. And yes, you could use it for like laying down these midtones, but they're not going to be as useful for blending down, say, that initial foundation layer, So when you want to go lighter, when you have to blend a foundation layer like I did previously, then you want to use a blending stump that's not really used a lot, that doesn't have too much graphite, because the graphite will come off into your composition. And obviously a base layer doesn't have to be as dark unless the composition calls for it. But yeah, just make sure you utilize your blending tool smartly. Right here, I would say that this little portion that I just laid down, it's not really gonna be my final piece, my final touch up. This layer that I just laid with the tortillons, this mid-tone layer, is pretty much just gonna be guidelines for me to build upon. I'm still gonna go over with some pencil here and there, the darker area especially. I'm still gonna bring in some highlights like I'm doing here with the eraser. And I'm still gonna do a couple more layers to really make it look a little bit better, make it look a little bit smoother, and make it look overall just better. This mid-tone layer is essentially just gonna be for a guideline to build up on. And if you guys do want to see the final product, I will be finishing this portrait piece soon, and I will be uploading the entire process. Sadly, it will be a speed drawing, so you guys won't get as much detailed visuals as here, but it is going to be the whole process, and there you guys will be able to see how I approach layering and how I approach my shading and my overall structure. So if you guys did make it to the end of this video, thank you guys. I appreciate you guys so much for watching my art, for watching my process, and hopefully you guys take something from this video. If anything, if you want to get better drawing, guys, always practice. Thank you for watching Lo-Fi Art. See you guys on the next one.